Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Polanski. What day is it? It is November 14th. What is the temperature? Well, 85, 90 freaking degrees. Fall in Los Angeles has always been a myth anyways. Seasons don't really exist, but typically around late October, November, we'll start getting some pretty quote-unquote colder days, 60s, maybe 70s, but not disgustingly hot. And it's fine in the summer. I love the sun. It's great, hot, whatever. But I just want some clouds. I want some rain. It can even be this sunny, but can it just be a little less hot? Also, our internet has been out all day, so that's fun. Fortunately, I thought ahead enough and was able to pull up the book information ahead of time, because part of me was I can just go ahead and I at least have the book's names written down and be I can just go ahead and try to pull names and settings and information from my memory. But we know that doesn't even go well when I have that information. Let me just put the mic a little closer to me. So hopefully nothing gets weird. And also, I could have recorded another day. It doesn't matter. But I put on the makeup and I put on the effort and, put my hair up. So hopefully the internet will be back soon, because I want to watch my stories and I can stream some things from my phone, but even my LTE is not really good. This is all boring. I also had a really, really awesome conversation with Tom I can't say his last name right. Tom B., who is a co-author of the book Nothing But a Good Time, the uncensored history of the 80s hard rock explosion. Learned a lot of cool, fun anecdotes about the hard rock movement and his experience with interviewing over 200 people and compiling that into a crazy oral history encompassing an entire decade. So check that out below if you have not already. You don't need to have read the book. You maybe want to be a fan of 80s music, but even if you're not, I think you'll find some really cool journalism information and just anecdotes about some cool famous people and things that, even if you have read the book, some fun exclusive tidbits. And before we get into this week's 5 books, I want to talk about what I've been watching in our little I Like to Watch corner. The first one that we have is the show Frayed, which is on HBO Max. It is in its 2nd season. It's an Australian show that has not gotten too much fanfare across the pond. But do they say that for Australia? I mean, technically we are across the pond. Fantastic. It is about a family in the 80s. The mother has lost her husband and all of her finances, so she is forced to move back to Australia with her 2 teenage children. She left behind her sort of lower middle class life and traded in for the towny British upper class life, but when her husband and her finances go, all that comes crashing down. Then there is a sort of cataclysmic incident at the end of season 1 that I don't want to give away. Season 2 picks up right after and takes what happened in season 1, pushes it to the extreme, but really keeps that, it's definitely a dramedy. I think it's, while it deals with some definitely dramatic, heavier elements, they keep, that light levity to it as much as they can. Maybe it's a black comedy, because I think it's definitely, even though there are some darker things, like I said, it's meant to have that irreverent, dark comedy tone to it. Really, really engrossing. There's 6 episodes in each season. So now that there's 2 seasons, there's 12 episodes. And I watched the 2nd season all in one day because it was so good. So I recommend Frayed Season 2. For the true crime fans, I recommend Wild Crimes on Hulu. I think it is a 4-part series about a woman who fell off a cliff and everyone thought it was an accident, and except her husband was there with her. And turns out that the circumstances were kind of suspicious. And his previous wife died in another accident. So this investigates the crime in a 4-part series, and the twists just keep on coming. Since it's done by Hulu and ABC, it's not super dramatized. It definitely has more of that 2020 objective factual feel to it. However, because it is a 4-part series, they do delve into some of the more overlying, things within the legal system, but it's very engrossing. And that one is a case that I really hadn't heard about, and I don't think too many people are talking about. So check that one out. For a film, I have The Beta Test, which I was about to pull it up, but I can't, goddammit. I think it's written, directed, and starring, I believe his name is Jim Cunningham. This is a horror movie, but it's a horror movie with that biting social commentary. So again, it's much more of there's gore, there's death, there's a horrific element to it, because our main character, Jim Cunningham, is kind of just the worst person, but really wants you to like him. He is a Hollywood agent, and those people can be the worst. It's the smarmy, sort of just I'm pretending I want to do what's best for you, but really I want to do what's best for you because I want you to do what's best for me. So it deals with what happens when he goes on he follows the instructions of a mysterious invitation one night and cheats on his wife, and the guilt and the ramifications of that reverberate into a much larger system. So it has this like Black Mirror sci-fi element to it with a ton of social commentary. This is not his first film. I believe he has written and directed and starred in at least one other film. So definitely very promising talent. I think it was like $5 or $6 to rent on Amazon. It is in theaters as well. So if it happens to be in a theater near you, go support it. But while it's a fantastic film, I definitely think it's much more of a I don't want to say it's less of a visual spectacle because there's some really cool camera work to it, but I do think it is one that I prefer the story and the characters and the plot development perhaps a little bit over the cinematography, in which case I think it is acceptable to watch this one on your TV. And what have I been listening to? Well, hello, Red came out. Where have you been? I mean, the all too well 10-minute version. Do I need to even say anymore? I saw Red. I saw her in concert. I think it was summer of 2013, which is basically 9 years ago. Time flies. That is the third Taylor Swift tour that I saw in Massachusetts, where I'm from. I saw the Speak Now tour was my first one. Then I saw Fearless. Then I saw Red. And then at that point, I think I was just in college, and not to say quote unquote over Taylor Swift. I just didn't love 1989 as much. But then Folklore and Evermore really brought me back next summer. If she does go on tour for those again, super into it. I did love the Fearless re-recording. And then Red, I think, was just reminds me of that freshman year of college. I think it came out September or maybe October, probably October 13th, because y'all know Taylor Swift loves 13. It came out October 13th, 2012. And I was a baby freshman in college, just figuring myself out. Lord knows I still had a lot of work to do, still do. But who I was at 18 is like, would love to say hello and talk to her because she is a different story. She is something. So it's been really beautiful. I mean, they're Taylor's versions, re-recordings, but there's also quite a few songs that are from the vault that she previously did not record, but are re-recorded and re-released for this. So it's almost it's an over 2-hour album. Like I said, the all too well 10-minute version, it's already the best Taylor Swift song, and adding more just makes it even better. But we're not here to talk about Taylor Swift, or are we? We are here to talk about this week's 5 books. And our first one is Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I hope I'm saying that right. I loved this book. I think it has a 4.41 rating on Goodreads at the time of recording. I want to give this about 4.5. I didn't rate it 5, but maybe I should have, because this one has everything. It has true crime. It has romance. It has a larger societal commentary. It has a quirky, irreverent, wonderful, easy to root for heroine named Donis Fontaine. It has we have an underground meth, we have everything. So our main character, Donis Fontaine, she grows up on the Ojibwe reservation, and she is about to start college. Unfortunately, she has some unfortunate incidents happening with her family, and she has to stay closer to home. So we meet her when she's kind of at the point in her life when she's also a really good hockey player, and she was supposed to go to college on a hockey scholarship. We meet her at a point in her life when she is stuck at home. She's just had a tragedy. She's just trying to make sense of her life and figure everything out. Her younger brother is a hockey star as well. So she sort of, is entwined with that community. And through that community, she meets a young boy named Jamie. And her and Jamie's chemistry is palpable from the beginning. So, of course, we know that something's going to go on with them. And there's, of course, a will they or won't they. But it's much more complicated because Jamie and her brother are potentially involved in a drug ring. And Donis is tasked with helping them figure out those secrets. So we have all of that there. But we also have the larger element of what it means to be a Native American young woman torn between wanting to stay home and wanting to help your family and wanting to go out and make more of the world. Of course, it's no secret that drugs and alcohol are known for being very prevalent on the Native communities, but how the community deals with it, especially, I think it's done with grace. And I think it's not excusing any of the behaviors of any of the characters, but it does give fair reasoning to show how this could very likely happen. So there's a lot of, it's a deeper novel. There's a lot of death. There is a lot of, graphic drug use and descriptions. But there's also a fantastic, strong new heroine who I want to be my best friend, and definitely the kind of person who I don't think I could have done half of the stuff she does and maintained myself nearly as strong as she does. So if you're into any of that, I say true crime, crime-centric, drug rings, strong women, exploring a different Native American tribe. I personally am not, very familiar with the Ojibwe reservation, but there's a lot of notes and cultural heritage stuff that I think is really great to be brought to the forefront for people myself who are pretty ignorant to Native American culture and could always use more. And when again, Donis, if you're real, be my best friend. I don't know if the film rights have been optioned for this yet. I don't know if it would be a good film just because, I'm sure it would be, but it'd have to be done with a lot of careful nitpicking of making sure we get the right parts of the main characters. Speaking of strong women, our next book is Sistersong by Lucy Holland. So I think this is based on, as it says, an old British folklore ballad, which unfortunately I cannot look up at the time of this recording. But this is in the ancient kingdom of Dumonia. And long legend has it that the kingdom has been connected to the land and that magic flows through the people and magic flows through the land. However, when we encounter our titular sisters from the Sistersong, there's 3 of them. Magic is faltering, and the way that they connect to their magic is all very different. I think all of these sisters are very different. The way that this fantasy British kingdom comes alive is really cool and beautiful because, again, I will be the first to admit I'm not always the biggest fan of fantasy just because I think sometimes the world building can either be too much or too little and distracting from the larger message and plot. But this was a beautiful mix of myth and change. We have our 3 young sisters, Riva, who is sort of she has an accident, so she's disfigured, so she feels like her physicality has always held her back and sort of led her to be more of a quiet, meek human. There is Kane, who never feels comfortable being in her female body. And so there's, deals with the issue of transgender, but more in the issue of, again, back then there were still people, I'm sure, who, while they may not have known the name for it, felt like they were not born in the correct body, and the way that it's done with care for the present day situation and what so many people go through in present day, but taking it back to the sort of mythological time, I think is really cool. And then the third sister, Shine, is sort of the black sheep, more meddlesome person. So all 3 sisters sort of know that something has to change. There's a war on the horizon. The magic is fading. The powers are fading. And all of it then, a young man named Tristan comes into their lives and changes things. I won't say too much more than that. There is a cool magician named Myrddin, who I'm not sure. I feel like there was slight nods to the Arthurian legends just by Myrddin, which was maybe influenced by Merlin. But again, I don't know too much about the original ballad or song, but because it is a British folklore song, I'm sure it has, somewhere around that time. So if you're into fantasy, British folklore, sister relationships, and taking a break from our reality to go to a different reality, then check out Sistersong. Speaking of different realities, we have our next book is Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood, and this is an Ethiopian-inspired fantasy retelling of Jane Eyre. And I have to say that I have actually never read Jane Eyre, which I know is bad, but I know that there's sort of that mysterious nanny/caretaker figure going to a Mr. Rochester, I believe, and then there's some stuff in that. All I know is in this book we have our main character Andromeda, who is known as a dead Terra, and that is a witch she purifies the house, sort of like a cleansing agent, or exorcist. That's the word I was looking for. She is hired to go to the mansion of a young man named Magnus. Everyone who comes under Magnus's tutelage or works for him pretty much seems to disappear. Something's going on, something's weird, and instead of evil spirits or demons specifically related to Catholicism, they have a different interpretation where they view the devil as the evil eye. And so Andromeda is tasked with keeping the evil eye away, and the evil eye manifests itself as a demonic possession, that's the word, but in a different way. So it was really interesting to see that legend, even though haven't read Jane Eyre, I know bits and pieces, and it was interesting to see all these Ethiopian retellings of it because I personally am not that familiar with Ethiopian culture beyond watching 90 Day Fiancé. So there's a lot of, that that what is evil, does it come from within? Can it be cleansed? What is demonic? There is a little bit of some, if you know Jane Eyre, there's a love element to it. So there's a little bit of something, will they, won't they with Magnus and Andromeda, but it's really more about Andromeda finding herself as well. So if you're into fantasy, but with a little more grounded in reality, not in the sense that, there's just as much mysticism in this as Sistersong, but it does take place in a more modern day world, and the fantastical element is more supernatural while our characters are more grounded in a quote unquote everyday situation. But back to quote unquote reality as well. Our next book that we're talking about is The Family by Naomi Krupitsky. So we trace the lives of two young women who we meet first as young girls, and the titular family is the Mafia family, specifically the Italian Mafia, and they grow up in 20th century Brooklyn. So our two best friends are Sophia. Sophia is the daughter of the main Mafia boss. She's headstrong, she's feisty, she's, everything that a little mafia boss's daughter would be. And then her best friend is Antonia, who is a little bit more soft-spoken, a little bit more reserved and quiet, and her father is one of Sophia's father's henchmen. So they quickly grow up loving each other, but understanding that the family and the mafia overshines and oversees everything in their lives. Until one day, Antonia's father is killed. That's not a huge spoiler because that happens very quickly in the beginning of the novel. I think it doesn't say that. So that was a slight spoiler, but it doesn't give too much away because it's really what happens with the ramifications of that death and how it's, we follow their lives up until they are grown women. They have children, they fall in and out of love with different people. I really enjoyed getting to see their perspectives of their different partners as well, because I think each of the men was also very different and well suited to each of the women, but suited in different ways. I think that the novel deals a lot with what it means, to be honest and loyal to your family, whether that is a more sinister business like the Italian Mafia, which literally involves lots of death and gruesome subjects, or it might even be a family with a religion or something else that you're not comfortable with and wanting a different life and wanting what's best for you, but feeling these tethers and these ties that are impossible to break. And then, there's that meaning of it. It's also, blood is thicker than water, and what it means to have your chosen family too, because while Antonia is not biologically Sophia's sister, the bonds and the things that they have gone through cement them in ways that are probably closer than many other biological sisters. So I found this one really engrossing. It was also, really the historical backdrop of the Great Depression and beyond in Brooklyn. In this Italian area, the way it came to life was really vibrant and came off the page in a really enlightening way. And last but not least, certainly not least, we have All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. So Elise Littlejohn she's on top of the world. She's potentially about to get a promotion. She works for a prominent, she's a corporate attorney. I kept thinking it was a law firm, but she just works for the legal department of this larger transportation company. I did find the little bits of business slightly confusing, but I don't think it overshadows the main story. It starts off when all of a sudden she's going in to meet her boss, and he's found dead. And this is problematic in many ways, but not only because Michael, her boss, is white and Elise is black. However, that doesn't seem to really be a big issue because it's quickly ruled that it's suicide, and lo and behold, Elise is promoted to his position as head of corporate attorney. So everything seems great, but the more that Elise starts to unpack the folds, there's definitely a lot of deception. There's, was it a suicide? Hint, hint, it was not, but I don't want to give too much more away. There's a lot of, there's corruption within the company. Elise also has an interesting backstory and a reason that makes her even more susceptible to betrayal and to be more on her toes. So her backstory and her secrets are popping up, especially once her brother gets involved with her company and sort of mends her present and past life. There's definitely elements of Get Out in this in terms of the way that race is explored and the way that Black people specifically are, for lack of a better way of putting it, hired in certain instances just to be figureheads, and the way that they are used as token figures is explored a lot in this novel. So there's the mystery element to it. There's the larger racial and sociological explorations, which I always find interesting in a mystery novel. Elise is a badass woman. Again, I feel like her and Donis, great bookends to this episode because both of these are badass women that I want to be my best friends. Elise is definitely a little bit older and she's a lawyer, so she has that experience, but that doesn't discount her from Donis because Donis is dope too. So if you're you're into thrillers, if you're into fast-paced, more legal and systemic based versus a more like fantasy supernatural type thing, then check this one out. Definitely more of a large, and also, you know, it takes place in Atlanta, so the city of Buckhead really, or the surrounding areas of Buckhead and Atlanta and those suburbs really come alive too and come off the page. So lots of cool immersive settings in these books as well. It's really hot. Like I said, it's 90 degrees. So I think that's enough for today, right? As always, let me know what you're reading. Follow me on Goodreads. Link down below. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Like me and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And until next time, stay reading. Bye.